What is a soldier? People will tell you a soldier is someone who stands for what they believe in. Someone who is willing to fight and kill their enemies in service of a larger purpose. For only when our enemies have been defeated can we have peace. And when the final battle comes, a soldier must be willing to face it head on, because there is nothing more honourable than a warrior's death. That's what I was told. And that's what I believed when I left home to join the army. I, Eran Rustin, a naive farm boy from Picania, would set out to join the Grand Picanian army to defend our kingdom from those who wished to see its values diminished. Like everyone else who joined the army, I was obsessed with the stories of Picania's glorious history, and there was no better symbol of that glory than the golden sword of Picania. I wanted nothing more than to serve under the warrior who had earned the right to wield it, Rebecca Lathein. I was still a budding recruit in the army when Rebecca mutinied against King Lamarck of Picania and took up arms against him. She called her followers the Ravagers and claimed King Lamarck was unfit to safeguard Picania's values. Her vision, the Picanian dream, was just like the stories I and so many others had grown up hearing about. A kingdom to be respected by our allies and feared by our enemies. Rebecca wasn't some noble lord or lazy king. She was a warrior, like us, and she stood for the people. Besides, what did King Lamarck really know of Picania? I soon left the army and pledged myself to Rebecca's cause and became a ravager. What we were doing was treason, but none of us cared. We were fighting for what we believed in, and that's what good soldiers do. We lived in the shadows and fought to bring down King Lamarck and his naive followers. It was there, in those shadows, that Rebecca met Velian Everts. Velian was the lord of the northern kingdom of Akisha who had a plan to kill King Lamarck, as well as the other 7 rulers of Landra's kingdom, in order to unite the continent under one rule. He convinced Rebecca to join him, and together with 6 other lords of Landra, they formed the group known as the 8, and called the Kings and Queens of Landra to the Royal Gathering. It was at the Royal Gathering in Kello that Velian's plan was set in motion. While the commander of Numero's army, Scott Russell, killed the royal families, us Ravagers prepared to take control of the 8 kingdoms and enforce order during the transition of power. After the gathering, the 8 took control of the kingdoms and formed the Shattered Crown Alliance. Our first mission under the alliance was to find and silence the missing heir to the throne of Yara, a young prince named Stefan Moyark. He was only a kid, but we knew what we had to do. Did we have any doubts? Any last minute protests? Perhaps. But if we did, no one spoke up about them. We were all soldiers, and good soldiers have to be willing to kill in service of something greater than themselves. However, before we were able to capture the prince, it seems fate intervened and we were given a new assignment. Nobody knows whatever happened to the young prince. All we know is he never came back to claim his throne when the war finally ended. The Ravagers and I were sent to the Mistlands, a dangerous jungle continent to the southeast of Landra, where we were to stop a growing rebellion led by the only surviving witness to the royal gathering, Prince Jasarvis the Kim of Hirakan. Jasarvis was the one the 8 blamed for the massacre at the gathering, but if Jasarvis were to tell the rest of Landra the truth of what really happened last night, the 8's rule over Landra would have been the short one. It was there, in the Mistlands, that one of our Ravagers, Jed Hydrich, made a name for himself at the Battle of the Earth Scar. It was at the Earth Scar that Jed first fought the Black Dagger, Lewis Baker, and almost won, shooting the Black Dagger out of the sky as he attempted to flee. The rebels were outnumbered and outmatched in every way by the might of the Alliance. The war should have been over as soon as it started, if it weren't for unforeseen circumstances. You see, the rebels were not the only ones hiding in the jungle. Deep in the heart of the Mistlands lived a tribe of warriors and savages, the Death Thorns. The Thorns had called the Mistlands home since long before the ships of Landra made landfall on its shores, and let's just say they weren't happy to see us. When the war came to their continent, the Thorns wrought havoc and devastation on both sides, Alliance and Rebel alike. The Eight knew they couldn't win a war against the Death Thorns, not in their own land. So to avoid having to fight a war on two fronts, General Scott Russell made a pact with the Thorns. In exchange for helping the Alliance win the war, the Thorns would be allowed to keep the captured rebels to be used as sacrifice to their Titan god. With the Thorns on our side, Dusarbus' rebellion routed, and the people of Landra united under the rulership of the Eight. It was only a matter of time until the war was over and we could finally have peace. It was at this point, the turning point of the war, that Scott Russell made his crucial mistake. A mistake that would ultimately dictate the outcome of the war. He brought the Thorns to Landra. Scott Russell departed from the Mistlands and set sail for Osunda, bringing his new Deaththorn pets with him. Osunda, one of the 8 kingdoms of Landra, was the home of Prince Alistair Highwind, an Alliance traitor, rebel collaborator and enemy of the Shattered Crown Alliance. Hoping to draw Alistair out of hiding, Scott set the Deaththorns loose in Osunda, but their appetite for devastation proved too much for Scott to control. The Thorns turned Osunda to ruin, leaving only ashes and bodies in their wake. While the Thorns orchestrated their massacre, the Ravagers and I were sent to Acacia to hunt down 2 of the leaders of the rebellion, Charlie Stewart and Lewis Baker. It was there in that miserable frozen kingdom that Rebecca fought her last battle, being slain in combat and robbed of the golden sword by the Black Dagger himself. With Rebecca dead and the kingdoms in open rebellion against the Eight and their Deaththorn dogs, we were left trapped in Acacia with nothing to do but hold our ground and wait for the inevitable. It wasn't long before the news made it to us. The Eight were dead, and the rebels were victorious. It would be there, in that frozen wasteland, that we would make our final stand. The now united kingdoms of Landra marched to Acacia and laid siege to the castle we were occupying. The siege lasted for weeks, with no food and minimal water, but we held our ground. And when the attack finally came, and our final battle dawned, we fled like cowards. Many Ravagers died holding the line so that the few of us that remained could escape. They died honourably, they died well. They died for nothing. They died fighting a war that was already lost, for a leader that was already slain, for a dream that had so long ago been forgotten. Now we few who remain in the shadows, in a world that hates us and hunts us and wants us dead, I asked you, what is a soldier? A soldier is a weapon, a tool to be used and discarded by the people who hold the power. People who have tricked you into believing in something bigger than yourself. People who offer you dreams but demand your servitude. I once thought I was a soldier. I see now, I was just a fool.
Stand